Focus on the Family has offices in countries all across the globe. When we get together, it's truly like a family reunion. Hello, I'm your host, Jean-Paul Beran, president of Focus on the Family Canada. Welcome to the Thriving Family, a Focus on the Family Canada podcast. This is a space where family, faith, and culture intersect. You can enjoy the Thriving Family podcast ad-free without any interruptions, thanks to the generous donors who support our ministry. This season, we're talking about the very intersection of faith and culture, along with sound bites on entertainment, theology, biblical narratives, and contemporary issues. We're bringing intimate conversations with a wide variety of ministry leaders, researchers, entrepreneurs, and creators who have all generously taken the time to share their heart with you. If you like what you hear, be sure to rate the episode wherever you listen to the podcast. Remember to check out each episode's notes for related resources and for how to support the Thriving Family podcast. For today's episode, I got to sit down with my friend and colleague, Graeme Schnell, CEO of Focus on the Family Africa. Our respective ministry offices may be on opposite sides of the globe, but we share a heart for families. I'm excited for you to hear my conversation with Graeme. Thanks, Graeme, for coming and spending time with us today.
It's so great to be with you. Thanks, JP.
It's just an honor and privilege to have known you and been on this journey with you, with both our different international offices and being under really the journey of just doing kingdom's work together. We're many, many miles away. Yet we are all doing the same thing and bring to a close bond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've really appreciated your heart that just comes through, and it's a real kingdom heart. And we are connected in that way. I mean, it's all for the kingdom.
It is for the kingdom. I'm glad that you said I have a heart. Because
let the record show.
Let the record show. I will play this for my children when they often say, "Where's your heart, Papa?" But so thank you for that. It does mean a lot to me. We're here talking about Canada and South Africa. You know, we look at that as it's different, two different countries, completely different cultures. Yet our two offices are under the name Focus on the Family and share the core values of family and faith. When I say it that way and unpack it sounds like, you know, the cultures are so different, but yet when you're under Christ, it just seems to align. And I want to ask, like, what culture similarities other than our Father and our Savior do you see in the family dynamics, despite the differences in the kilometers that we are?
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking of a story that Jim Daly, I've heard him share a number of times. When he was doing a lot of international work, he was in Kenya, so in Africa, found himself speaking to a child development specialist and just wondering about whether this message of Focus on the Family would be received in Kenya. And he asked the question, do you think these resources, do you think they'd be applicable here in Africa? And this child development specialist responded and said, well, it's typical of an American to think that you invented family. And that's maybe a bit harsh, but the message she was conveying was there's an aspect of family that's universal. God designed family in his way. And of course, there are differences in contexts and cultures, but there are still couples in South Africa and Canada that just want to build a healthy marriage, parents that want to raise their kids, and particularly, as you say, when it comes to Christian families, this desire to raise kids with biblical values, to train them up in the ways of the Lord, and to live out a healthy family that reflects God's design. And so certainly there are similarities as much as there are differences.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think there's more similarities in raising families, regardless of what country you live in. I have never met one person raising a family saying, "I don't want the best for my child. I don't want to," you know, the child wants to be raised in a way that they're going to be respectful to others, respectful to everyone around them, and you get that from biblical teachings of how to respect our Savior Jesus Christ, of he's the ultimate one to, gave his life for all of us so we can be in a better spot. And generally, as Canadians, there's a lot of people who have come to Canada, like my family. I'm first generation Canadian, and I often heard, we came here because we wanted to give you a better life. And on top of that, though, we were raised in a Christian home, and that's what gave us that better life, regardless of where we were. Is that the same in South Africa?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, there's a lot of South Africans that are immigrating to other parts of the world for a similar reason, but sometimes a misfounded reason, in the sense that depending on where you place those values, maybe there's greater resources, access to, better facilities and healthcare and education and those kinds of things, which are good and important. But I think when you speak to people of faith, at the core, the most important thing is to be in an environment where you're able to transition that faith to the next generation.
Absolutely.
And I would say in South Africa, we have an amazing opportunity and environment that is still very, very receptive and open, and not hostile to faith, which is a beautiful thing for families. So we've got certainly challenges, but we do have an amazing openness and blessing in that regard.
I've had the privilege of visiting South Africa and spending time with you there. And one of the things that stood out for me is when you say that, the openness, is we're sitting in a restaurant, I believe, and they were singing, like there was Christian music being played. There were people praying openly around. And I was kind of in shock. I was like, wow, this is so different than what I'm exposed to in Canada. Generally, when we sit down for dinner in an open restaurant, it's very quiet. We put our heads down and we quickly pray so that we don't interrupt anybody. I don't want to be like seen as an outcast. That was really refreshing for me.
Yeah.
When it comes to serving South African families, what are the biggest issues that fuel your heart for the ministry right now?
Well, when you talk about fueling this passion, I think it really stems from just the experience I had. I started at Focus on the Family as a young single guy, and then just being exposed to all the content and resources of Focus on the Family in getting married, in my marriage, as the kids came, and parenting, that had such a profound impact on my own life, my own family, that my passion and this desire to get these principles out to others was the main fuel, and recognizing that it is principles. It's just these biblical principles. It's not a formula. It's not an A plus B is always going to be C. We understand we live in a broken world, and it's not formulaic. But generally, when we can apply these biblical principles, family goes well. And as family goes well, church and society and the nation as a whole.
Absolutely.
And so, my passion is there for that reason. And I think another pivotal moment for me was having my first child. And, I just remember getting this incredible, greater understanding of the father's heart. Right. Now as a father for the first time myself, recognizing what it means to just have this love of a father, and in South Africa, responsibility, but just also the glimpse of the father's love for me. There's a song, and I'm always cautious with the words, and you might have to edit this out, but at the time I was driving back and forth from the hospital just after we had our first child, and I was listening to this song. It's a Christian band, but there was a line within this one song that every time I heard it, it got me absolutely weeping.
Really? Wow.
And the line was this. It said, God didn't screw up when he made you. He's the father who loves to parade you. And I just got taken back to every visiting hours in the hospital in those first few days, where I'd have this incredible joy in that viewing room, where people are on the outside and they're looking through the window, and the father got this privilege and responsibility to hold up this child to the window. And for those who came to see, and even if they didn't come to see, I was there.
You're showing everybody. Yeah.
And in that verse of when Jesus comes to be baptized, and this voice booms from heaven and says, "This is my son whom I love, and with whom I am well pleased." And I'm showing this child saying, "This is my child whom I love." But now, as this father, understanding the love the father has for me, that he would show me to the glass and say, "This is my son whom I love, with him I am well pleased." And so something of that father heart has also really birthed a passion in me, because there are so many homes with absent fathers in South Africa, and just this passion to convey this message of the power that the father has in the home, but also to step in and to play something of a role in the gap in those homes where those fathers are missing. And so that's part of the passion that's within me.
That's a very cool story, because I don't think we'll ever stop as a dad myself parading my children, regardless of 10 or they get into their 30s. I'll be like, that's my girl. That's my girl. We've pointed to that. But you touched on something of a lot of distant fathers, if that's a term in South Africa, and can you speak into that? Like, how is that there, and how you working with Focus on the Family South Africa to connect with families?
Yeah, South Africa has a painful past and a difficult legacy. As a result, I think a big part of the challenges we face with family comes from this past of apartheid. And so for those who aren't familiar with that, essentially was a government, a very evil government regime that separated entire groups of people into different geographic locations. But then what would happen is, and these were African people that were separated, but then the men were taken away or called out to come and work in the mines, which were closer to the cities. And so you had this separation of the husband and father from the family. And that really decimated family in South Africa, because what happened was these men, oftentimes they'd end up having other relationships because they were away from their families for so long. They'd have almost entire families. But something of that culture, this migrant labor that led to this brokenness of family, has really perpetuated into modernity in South Africa. The other issue, which is a big one, and it's very controversial in many respects, but in African culture, there's something we call lobola, which is a bride price. And a bride price. And so there's a payment that is made by the prospective husband to the father of the bride.
So like an arranged marriage?
It's not arranged in the sense that it's still, the couple comes together, they decide they want to get married, but before they can get married, the husband-to-be needs to pay a price to the father of the bride in order to claim her as
just
his
for clarity,
bride.
That's not paying for the wedding.
It's not the wedding.
Okay.
It's not the wedding, and generally, it's a relatively set price. It's not. It is a bit of flexibility, but historically it's been 11 cows, but the price of that is very high, and for a lot of men that are earning maybe minimum wage in South Africa, they have to save for years and years and years to get to a position where they can make that payment of this lobola to be able to get married. And what happens is, in that time, while they're waiting in this relationship, they end up often having children, and so these beginnings of families are birthed. But with any relationship, with any marriage, there are difficult times that come. But when you have a covenant of marriage, although not always perfectly, and we understand that, there's something of a security within that covenantal marriage. And now they don't have that. And so when there's a bump in the road, it's easy to say, well, actually, let's just call it quits. And so then you have this family that's broken before it even has a chance to begin. And what that's led to in South Africa, in terms of the statistics, is incredibly low marriage rate. So only 25%. So if you flip that around, 75% of people who could be married are not married in South Africa. And very high percentage of kids born out of wedlock. Only 30% of kids will have the blessing of being raised in a home with two parents. 65% of homes won't have a father in the home.
Wow.
And so, what that leads to is, I often just think of, just kind of put it into a story of a child. Think of a young boy sitting in a classroom. He comes from maybe largely an impoverished background, which is a good portion of South Africa. His dreams and goals, he's been raised by a single mom. All his friends are being raised by single moms. His desire is to finish school, maybe get a tertiary education so he can get a better job, so he can earn more money than he currently has. Relationships will probably come along the way, and there'll be kids along the way as well. But he's not thinking of that within the context of marriage and family, right? Because he's never seen that modeled for him.
He has no example.
He hasn't got an example. So it's not even he's not anti-family. It's not this kind of evil, thing that I'm against family. It's just, it's never been modeled for him. And so it becomes this cyclical thing.
Because if you don't see the model of a mom and a dad raising the kids, the dad and mom being home, interacting with the child, and I'm saying all of that, and then you add and then someone that follows Christ. Yeah. If you don't have any of those things, how are you going to know? You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. I often tell the story. A young intern counsellor came to focus on the family in South Africa. Wonderful person, passionate about the Lord, and but we discovered that she had come from a broken home, been raised by a single mom. In fact, she had become a head of a child-headed household, and she helped us develop a child-headed household program that's running today. But wow. She had been
a great intern.
Amazing intern. In fact, she was running our youth programs, passionate about the youth.
Did you end up hiring her?
I wish we had. But the amazing story, which I'll get to in the end, the end of that story. But she had been with us for about 2 years when she shared a devotion with the staff, and she said, when I grew up, I always knew I wanted to have a family. I could just picture myself as this mom with these kids. And then she said, but I realized that I didn't necessarily have a husband as part of that picture.
Oh, wow.
And it had taken her 2 years of working at Focus on the Family, being surrounded by all the content and resources that had caused that light to turn on for her. She was a believer. She was passionate about Jesus, but she suddenly realized that her worldview had been shaped by her experience. It wasn't again that she was anti-men or anything like that. She hadn't had the model, and so her desires didn't necessarily include that, and that changed. And so the beautiful part, or the beautiful end of the story, is that the reason she left us was that she got married, and we still keep in contact. She's got a couple of kids, and so she's living out that family life. But that her story represents the majority, actually, of the youth in our country that are being raised without that model of family. And so it's a cyclical thing that they're growing up. They're often having kids out of wedlock. And so there's another generation that's not seeing family modeled.
Now, in that, it reminds me of the importance of evangelizing to show the model of Christ to others. So my question is in that scenario, and with Christianity so open in South Africa, with those stories, do those individuals know Christ, or are they not exposed to Christ? And I'm going to push the envelope a little bit, is that they might, the picture I have in my head, and maybe some of our listeners and viewers will have the same analogy, is someone knows Christ, a story that's told for them from somebody else, and then the story they're hearing doesn't involve a dad. Is that what's happening, or is it just they're not hearing a story at all?
I think it's probably similar to a lot of countries where there's an openness to Christianity. There's a high percentage of tick the box Christian people,
yes,
but not necessarily a relationship with Jesus and a revelation of not only what Jesus has done in terms of the salvation that we have freely accessible through him, but even just of his design and his best for humanity, which is within family. In South Africa, not only are there a lot of just maybe nominal Christians, there's also what we call African traditional religion. And so,
can you expand on that?
Historically, a lot churches were missionaries came to South Africa and planted these the beginnings of Christianity within African culture. But over time, some of the traditional African culture has blended with Christianity, and so you have these entire movements that are not what we would call Orthodox Christianity, because they've kind of gone back to ancestral worship and various traditional ceremonies and sacrifices and things that are clearly not part of our Christian faith. And so I just say that to say that although there's an openness and we can engage these people and they would be open to the message of the gospel, but sometimes in reality, as they're living it out, they're not living in a relationship with Jesus. And so we have an opportunity, particularly with those young people sitting in that classroom, not only to share about the value of marriage and family to this generation that isn't seeing it modeled, but to share the author of family. And that's the other incredible thing about Focus. And one of our programs, or incredible thing about South Africa, one of our programs is called No Apologies. Mm-hmm. It's not overtly Christian, and we were able to get into government schools across the country.
And is that because it is a subtle piece of Christianity?
It's based on biblical values, but it doesn't have scriptures on the pages.
Yeah.
But again, because of the openness of the culture generally to Christianity, within the classroom, the facilitator who's presenting this message can share their own testimony, and they can share it's an abstinence message primarily. There's a lot to it: character, identity, the promotion of marriage and family, but this idea that actually sexuality was designed for within the context of marriage. But for the facilitator to say, the way that I've been able to do this is that I have a relationship with Jesus who empowers me to live this out, which I know is his best for me. And I'm able to live in the freedom and the fullness of that because of the relationship I have with him. And so salvation happens in the classrooms through this message of abstinence and the value of marriage and family.
That is incredible that you're in schools and promoting that. It must build a hunger for the young ones, because why wouldn't, when you hear like, okay, I got God in my corner, I have a mom and dad that both love and care for me, and it might be so like foreign to somebody who's never been exposed to that, and they hear it and they're like, that's something that I would really want. And maybe it plants that seed to break this chain that you're seeing.
Exactly. That's the prayer. And that, there are ministries, and we would do the same with a desire to kind of call the absent father home, but that's a very difficult task.
Yeah.
We see a more maybe strategic way to change the landscape of South Africa is to reach that kid in the classroom that maybe doesn't have a father, but
it's craving one.
But it's craving one. Absolutely. Yeah. But without intervention, might just replicate what his experience has been.
That's absolutely right.
But if we can catch him and promote that value of marriage and family to that child, perhaps in a generation to come, those statistics will look a lot better.
I hear that as a child from a divorced family, I always craved a stronger relationship with my own earthly father, and which actually built a strong relationship with my heavenly father. But the value of marriage, when Susan and I got married, we made it's that sacred covenant that you mentioned, and we all know that it is a sacred covenant. When raising our two daughters, my marriage isn't always great. I'm sure yours is perfect.
Right? Perfect.
But if I didn't have the example of what it means to be in a sacred covenant of marriage, it could have been very easy to end our marriage, which then the example that I knew on earth was to have that was what was there. That was the blueprint that I had. And if I did the blueprint and changed it, now my kids are built for that success. There's like, this is what it takes to have a strong marriage.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a big task, because so much better to witness over your whole entire life, the model of a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
To go into a classroom and spend 2 days and try and convey that. We understand that that's a big task, but we serve a powerful God who's able to do more than we could ask or imagine. And we're trusting that this message, we know it's from him, and we believe that he can use it to work in those lives.
You've touched on so many, and I have one more that kind of sticks out is if you can touch on the challenges families in South Africa face in terms of child health and resources available to them. Because in Canada, our healthcare is by and part mostly fully covered. And so we don't see a lot of issues that with health within families. But can you expand on what's that like in South Africa? And how God and your ministry is working on that?
Sure. And probably your listeners will be familiar with the reality of HIV and AIDS, and that South Africa has really, to a large degree, been something of the epicenter of that pandemic. And although there's a lot less emphasis placed on it, and there are some incredible interventions, medicine and a lot of campaigns that have been very powerful and effective, unfortunately, HIV is still very prevalent in South Africa. And partly it's, although the medication is available, sometimes the clinics don't have stock of the meds that are required, and sometimes people aren't able to get the transport that they need to go and fetch the medication.
Right. Yeah, because it's probably if they're in a rural area and they need to get to a city, it's not as easy.
It's not as easy, and so there are challenges in that regard. And even though prevention of transmission from mother to child is certainly very possible, sometimes even there the medication is missing, and we've got a lot of children in South Africa that are HIV positive.
Wow.
And so that's really sad. Although again, far better than it was maybe 20 years ago. But in terms of just the landscape of South Africa and healthcare, it really is very problematic for the vast majority of people who don't have private healthcare insurance. Their only option is government healthcare, and the experience that so many people will have in a government facility, they could be desperate need of assistance and sit in a hallway waiting to see a doctor for hours, maybe even days.
Wow.
And so it really is a massive challenge, and I think it all is intermingled with poverty, just access to general resources. So even healthy food. Again, as I've mentioned, transport to get the medication, not just for HIV, but you gain access to the medication that's required just when people get sick. And so, unfortunately, a lot of adults and children are suffering as a result of just the landscape of South Africa, the third world nature of healthcare, if I can put it that way, in our context.
It's amazing when you share that, because it's almost it's so shocking to hear as a Canadian, because we don't really hear of HIV transmitted from mother to child anymore. We don't hear much. I mean, there is poverty in Canada, don't get me wrong, but I remember vividly when I came down, had the honor and privilege to be with you and your team, where we went into small villages with just bags of food and the joy the family saw. And I was like, it's just rice. Why are you guys so excited? And it's like, that's more than they will have in a month, which was really amazing. And a lot of stuff you've shared on and touched on, we go through that in Canada. There's a lot of similarities, but it doesn't seem it's as much in our face as it is with what's happening in South Africa.
I think it's the extreme nature of it. As you said, there's poverty in most countries. But I remember a friend of mine who immigrated to the States, and he said he was amazed his church was doing this food parcel drive, to provide food parcels for families in need, which is something we do in South Africa, and we do that for the kids in our child-headed household program and various other campaigns. And he said, but in the state that he was in, it was a drive-through food parcel collection. And he kind of was giggling at that because he said, poverty in South Africa, certainly you don't have a car.
You're not driving to pick it up. It's not a good,
And so, it's just the different levels of poverty, I think, and just the intensity of it in South Africa.
When you're touching with, and I hear with Focus on the Family South Africa, I have this impression that you're really investing into the youth as a way to like break that chain. And so tell me a little more of how the projects that you're doing with the youth that are there, and the kind of like the programs that are there with the building that you have, and how you bring in the youth and expose them to Christ and expose them to healthy families or a biblical family. I shouldn't say, I don't want to misconstrue. There are healthy families that don't follow Christ, but a healthy family with the model of Christ at the center point.
Yeah, absolutely. We, I think across the world, as Focus on the Family, the primary core pillars are marriage and parenting. Yes. And in a perfect setting, if you get marriage right and then you get the parenting right, the kids will benefit, and they'll grow up, and then you can minister to them within marriage and parenting. Right, okay. We've decided that youth would be another third core pillar for us in terms of the audience that we want to reach, and it's largely because there's just so many youth that don't have parents, or we're not able to. The parents that we're reaching are not those that are going to impact these youth, that child sitting in that classroom with that single parent mom, and so we want to stand in the gap and play something of a parental role, if I can put it that way, for these young people. And so the primary program that we use is that No Apologies program, which really does, again, promote the value of marriage and family, but it also builds character into the lives of these young people. We've got an age up version of that. So as they get a bit older, and we're talking about healthy relationships and dating and what does this look like, but hopefully, again, to point them towards a biblical marriage. And then the other program that's very youth-focused is our child-headed household program that I hinted at earlier. It's called Tales of Hope. And it's a very sad reality in South Africa that there are huge numbers of kids that are maybe 15, 16 years old, and they are responsible for the home.
Really?
Their parents are possibly deceased. Sometimes they're working in another part of the country. Sometimes there's an adult in the home, but it's a grandmother, and they're actually looking after the grandmother rather than the other way around. And
at 15,
it's unbelievable to think. And these kids are so vulnerable. So often that they've been subjected to incredible abuse. They've faced amazing challenges. They've really wrestled with poverty. And so we have this program that's quite multifaceted and covers a range of things, in the sense that we come with practical help, food, clothing. Some of these kids have had the same school uniform for years and years, and it's wearing thin.
For our viewers, in South Africa, to go to school, you need to have a uniform, regardless of what school it is. In North America and Canada, when you say uniform at school, it's a private school. Yeah. That's not the case here.
All kids in every school wear a uniform, and you have to wear the school uniform.
And if you don't wear the uniform, you don't get to go to school, right?
And so sometimes the kids are missing a day of school every week because that's the day they wash their uniform.
Right. Wow.
Or sometimes there's a rainy day, and because of the house that they live in leaks, and their clothes aren't able to dry, or they get wet and they miss school the next day. It's devastating in that regard. And these child-headed households are in an even worse predicament. They've got no one to help them through that. And so we step in practically. The program covers a range of things. It's emotional. It's dealing with the loss and the grief that they've experienced. It's speaking into practical things like budgeting and how do they manage the household, even parenting aspects, because they're looking after their siblings. But a lot of it is just loving and caring for these young kids that really just need someone in their corner.
And they probably haven't had somebody that just loves and cares for them.
Yeah. And creating a community, because we work through the schools and we bring these kids together, and for them to realize they're not alone, that there are others that are facing similar challenges that they can kind of share with each other, and then have focus and this facilitator that's presenting the program, feeding them every time that they meet, sending them with food to take back to their home, helping them with applications for universities that are coming up, helping them with getting documents. Sometimes these kids don't have identity documents, and that can really set them back when it comes to applying for grants that they may have access to. It's a beautiful and really heart-wrenching program. and the stories
amazing.
that come out of it are just, they bring you to tears. And yet they can be so encouraging. We had a young lady, she was raped when she was 14. She became a part of our program. She was pregnant with this little child. And then we journeyed with her as she gave birth to this child. We helped her with baby clothes and nappies. I think you would call them diapers, and food. And we just really journeyed, that she knew that we were there for her. And she actually came to our office early this year. She walked about 5 miles. She had just experienced a potential abuse. She had managed to get away from this guy. But she came to focus, and she said to the staff member that she spoke to as she arrived, she said, "This is my safe place, because I know the focus on the family is here for me." And that's what we want to do. And sometimes it feels like a drop in the ocean. Right. But when you hear that one story, that made a huge difference.
Wow. That is a very powerful story. That leads me to, I don't even know how to ask this question, but it's because all the things you said make me think of what I take for granted in Canada. And the question I have is, can you share something that we as Canadians might take for granted, especially when it comes to family life in our community? But I think all the stories you were sharing, like even the fact of I look at our church, and we do a great outreach for those that are marginalized, and we provide food. But it was the same story as to get the food, you drive in your car, and the perspective of, I'm not diminishing the poverty, the line of what needs help for, but just that element of, that individual drove. It's a different kind of scale. But what is something that comes to mind as Canadians that we see that?
Do you know, I think, I mean, it would be tied to the reality of the extreme nature of poverty. And when it comes to family, if you think about even those child-headed households, what they're dealing with, they're the head of the family, but they're still trying to finish their schooling.
Right.
They're dealing with the same issues every other teenager deals with in terms of homework that's supposed to be done and exams that are coming up, but at the same time,
anxiety of what's it like to be a teenager in general,
finding out their own identity. But they've also got to put food on the table for their 3 siblings that are in primary school or pre-primary school. And that's the more extreme to thinking of the childhood households, but just in general, I think it's the severe lack that can put an incredible mental strain on family life, because it's just it's the anxiety around, will I be able to provide for my family? With unemployment incredibly high in South Africa, so many of the prayer requests that we get into to focus every week, please pray that I can find employment so that I can provide for my family. And so I think I would say in many respects, it's that if you've got a job, whatever that job is, that's able to bring an income, that you've got a roof over your head, glass in your windows.
Yeah.
I think I remember somebody saying, if you've got glass in your windows, as a statistic around the world, you would be considered wealthy.
Okay.
Because you're above what maybe the majority of people have, particularly in impoverished communities. And so I think it's recognizing and then being able to be grateful.
Yes.
And we all need that. We all need to be able to
absolutely.
say, whatever it is, just for this meal that I'm about to enjoy, thank you, Lord. Let me be grateful for that. If it is a car that I can drive to the job that I'm about to do, whatever it might be.
And sometimes it's
gratitude.
challenging to find that piece of what you're grateful for.
Yeah.
And God reminds us every day of like we should be grateful just for his grace on us.
Yeah.
Giving his only son for us.
Absolutely.
And then at times we kind of take certain things for granted of what we have. One time I've heard someone say then what brings joy in someone's life? It's faith, family, friends, and work. And then he said the work element is when you look at your work as being of service, regardless of what the job is. If you're of service, you will find joy in that.
Yeah.
And too often, even in myself, in my role, I'm like, I got to go to work and whatnot. And I work with focus on the family. And there are times that it's hard, but I am exceptionally grateful that God is in my life to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you for those reminders. There's so much we can learn from of what's happening in South Africa compared to Canada. So many similarities as well, in so many ways. But what's one thing that stands out that we can actually, build on and learn from the difference of culture that we have? That you would give us help and advice. Here's something you could try in Canada.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's beautiful about African culture is this community focus.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can get warped as well. And I understand that, it takes a village to raise a child. Sometimes that can be a hindrance because there is a responsibility on the parent to raise the child. But God did create us for community.
Yeah.
And African culture really is very community focused, and it's this ability to step in and help and share the burden. And I think sometimes my perception, at least of North American cultures, it can be quite isolated. It can be quite individualistic, and there's responsibilities on me. There's a phrase or it's a word called Ubuntu in South Africa, and that essentially means I am because you are. I exist as a part of our togetherness, and that's a powerful thing. I think even when it comes to family, and even God's design for how He intended us to live out in community, and being able to put aside my isolation and my individualistic nature and step into the community and say I'm here to help. But at the same time, when I need help, that there's others around that can step in and help me.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your time, taking time out of your busy schedule to spend with us. I feel like we've just scratched the surface. And so for our listeners, I'd like to ask you to come back one day and we could continue this conversation. And also that Focus Canada and Focus South Africa are looking at doing collaborative and partnership things together. And so stay tuned for more of those things that are going to happen. We'll have it posted on our link. If you're looking for more information of this conversation and more about Focus on the Family South Africa, we'll direct you to the link from this podcast. Thanks, Graeme.
Thanks so much, JP. And we're excited to be working together.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Thriving Family, a podcast from Focus on the Family Canada. If you like this episode, please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to subscribe. If you feel led, you can make a donation to focusonthefamily.ca/podcast giving, or find the link in the episode notes. This episode is available ad-free because of the generosity of our donors. Every gift helps the Thriving Family reach more people with hope, support, and encouragement. If you wish to talk about this further, or if it brought up something that you would like to talk through, you can have a free one-time consultation with one of our registered counselors at Focus on the Family Canada over the phone. Give us a call at 1-800-661-9800 to request a consult. It's our gift to you. Most importantly, remember that we are here for you and your family.